order the meeting of the Harlem Community Development Corporation for today, Friday, August 12, 2016. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, Empire State Development, we welcome public comment on the items on the agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes, and they should only address the items that are under consideration. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any. Having been noted for the record, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meeting, which was held on April 22nd. Those minutes are before you and have been provided to you. Are there any comments?
Motion to move the minutes.
Is there a second?
I have a correction.
Tell me your name, please.
Eric Rivera from State Senator Serrano's office. In the designees, you have me listed as Eric Rivera for Congressman Jose Serrano, and it's New York State Senator Serrano.
Okay. Jeff, motion with the amendment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Holly Drakeford, second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. With that, we'll move to the next item on our agenda. Victoria Gordon will now present the request for adoption of Harlem CDC's amended weatherization division budget for fiscal year 2016/2017 and authorization to take related items. The agenda out for your consideration. Harlem Community Development Corporation approval of HCDC's amended weatherization budget. Victoria, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As you may or may not know, the weatherization budget is funded by the United States Department of Energy and also the Health and Human Services Department. Fortunately for us this year, we were given an increased allocation. So you were presented with our budget in March of $1,066,268. It has been increased by $88,188 to $1,154,456. This allows us to put a greater per unit cost into the actual buildings that we are weatherizing, and we are asking for your approval of that amended budget today. The amended budget is in your materials. And do you have any questions?
No discussion? Okay. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Is there a motion? Motion made by Holly Drakeford. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Melvin Norris. He will present the request for a grant of up to $200,000 to the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce for the Harlem Havana Music and Cultural Festival. Before he begins, we have wonderful distinguished guests here. If they wouldn't mind just saying hello and introducing themselves. There may be some people who don't know who they are.
Lloyd Williams, President, Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce.
Vosa Rivers, first Vice President of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce.
With that, Melvin, the show is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Melvin Norris, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Harlem CDC. Harlem CDC's directors are being requested to authorize the corporation to provide a grant of up to $200,000 from Harlem CDC's Special Programs Fund to the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce to fund a portion of expenses in connection with the first annual Harlem Havana Music and Cultural Festival. The Harlem Havana Music and Cultural Festival is an international cultural exchange that will celebrate the cultural connection between Harlem, New York, and Havana, Cuba. It includes a robust schedule of activities during Harlem Week between August 15th and 21st that will incorporate visual and performing arts, fashion, education, and ethnic foods. World-renowned Cuban musicians, visual artists, dancers, fashion designers, chefs, and educators will travel to Harlem this summer to participate. Plans for the cultural exchange have been in development for over 2 years, with efforts led by Congressman Rangel and the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with U.S. Representative Gregory Meeks and the Cuban Deputy Minister of Culture, Fernando Rojas. The Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, as part of a U.S. delegation, traveled to Cuba in March and auditioned elite Cuban musicians and artists for the opportunity to travel to Harlem to participate in the festival. Among the selected artists are Cesar Lopez, considered one of the most important saxophone players in Latin jazz, and leads Habana Ensemble, a group featuring some of Cuba's top musicians. Jorge Luis Pacheco, a leading pianist of the new generation of jazz in Cuba, and Edward Roca Salazar, a contemporary artist also known as Choco, deemed by the New York Times as one of Cuba's most distinguished printmakers. Performances and events will take place at some of Harlem's most iconic cultural institutions and hotspots, including the Apollo Theater, Dance Theater of Harlem, First Corinthian Baptist Church, Jenny's Supper Club, the National Museum in Harlem, and Harlem Week stages. Harlem CDC's funds will be used for expenses related to the promotion and operation of the festival. Marketing and promotions for the event will include graphic design and printing of promotional banners and calendars of events, in addition to companies and individuals promoting the initiative through social media, event sites, general media, and websites. Public relations firm will handle local, regional, national, and international promotions of the initiative and handle press conferences at Sylvia's, Gracie Mansion, and JFK Airport. Operational support includes production costs and equipment rental for the outdoor stage locations on Saturday, August 20th and Sunday, August 21st. Professional photographers and videographers will be utilized to capture images at all sites and events on film and video. Additionally, their work will be used for live streaming during events. The Harlem community will benefit from the infusion of culture, music, and increased tourism. The organizers of the event envision the first annual Harlem Havana Music and Cultural Festival as a catalyst for myriad future endeavors, partnerships, and collaboration between Cuba and the U.S., revolving around tourism, the arts, and cultural industries, including the performing arts, music, fashion, and culinary initiatives. As a result of the initial engagement between New York-based leaders and Cuban representatives during the U.S. delegation's visit in March, strategic partnerships have already been created. This initiative will build upon the synergy generated. Already scheduled for February 2017, an American delegation of performing and visual artists and cultural leaders, including the Greater Harlem Chamber, will travel to Havana and take part in a number of curated events. Overall, the Harlem Havana Music and Cultural Festival will result in a rich and diverse event that will bolster economic activity at participating venues, including Jenny's Supper Club and the National Jazz Museum, and extend to surrounding local restaurants, bars, cultural institutions, street vendors, and other businesses. It is estimated that Harlem Havana and the influx of Cuban entertainers during Harlem Week will increase attendance to record levels. Harlem Week attendance already generates over 2 million participants from all over the world. On the basis of the materials presented, it is recommended that the directors find that the proposed funding is an eligible activity in accordance with Harlem CDC's mission and authorize a grant of up to $200,000 for the Harlem Havana and Music Festival. At this point, I would like to introduce Lloyd Williams, Vosa Rivers, and Jasmine Heatley, who would like to make a presentation to the board regarding the festival.
First of all, good morning. Thank you. Let me go. Sorry. Good morning. Thank you. I appreciate you entertaining the support for Harlem Havana. Briefly stated, we have been working on this initiative now for over 2 years. It is an economic development initiative. Let me briefly say how this will happen is on an annual basis. It will be Harlem going to Havana in February. And I hope you note that we chose to go to Havana in February, okay? Harlem going to Havana in February for a 6-day period, and it will then in August, and by the way, we chose February because, as you know, it's Black History Month. So Harlem going to Havana in February, and then in August, Havana coming to Harlem to coincide with the Harlem Week events and activities, because we already have much of the infrastructure to support what they're doing. It is about tourism. It's about economic development. So as a result of that, we have 7 of the restaurants in Harlem, in East Harlem, Central Harlem, and West Harlem, who are participating in this process. And Vosa Rivers will give the other updates. In addition, we're utilizing some of the key institutions in Harlem. We have, it was mentioned, the Apollo Theater, the Dance Theater of Harlem. We'll also be going to Cathedral Church of St. John's the Divine. We'll also be going to 1 Corinthians Baptist Church in that which we're doing. What you're going to feel in the presentation is a sense as to what's taking place. We should note that we've been dramatically encouraged on this by the governor of the state of New York, who had a press conference at Sylvia's Restaurant on the 24th of June, publicly announcing this and his co-chairmanship of it. The mayor of the city of New York, who on July 14th had a major press conference and at Gracie Mansion. I think you guys should give us credit for being able to pull together the mayor and the governor agreeing on anything. And of course, Congressman Rangel has been the lead person. We're working very closely with I Love New York on this campaign, with NYC and Company on this campaign. And if you don't mind, I'll just let Vosa Rivers give you an update. Our partnership, as many of you know, with HCDC goes back many, many years. And so I'm pleased to recognize that we do have one of our distinguished board members, Keisha Sutton, who is here. And of course, Curtis Archer already identified that he's a member of our board. We appreciate your attention, and Vosa will give you the presentation. Then we're there for any questions which you may have.
If it's appropriate, I'd like to just hand out some collateral materials just so you can get a sense. Also, if you direct your attention to the screen, there are images that we will be showing you that captures what we are doing. Let me just say that the relationship with Harlem and Havana started over 100 years ago. In 1917, out of the Armory that is at 142nd Street and 5th Avenue, there was a group called the Harlem Hellfighters. And the Harlem Hellfighters had a band. And in that band, headed by James Reese Europe, he selected musicians from East Harlem, which were primarily Cuban musicians, musicians from the Caribbean, African-American musicians, and of course, Puerto Rican musicians. That relationship with that band traveling all throughout the world, and specifically Europe in 1917, and after the war coming back to Harlem, in a major parade that started on the streets of Fifth Avenue downtown and came up into Harlem was a very, very special moment. So we recognize that history and understand why when we visited with Cuba to have a conversation about this annual cultural activity, that they would enthusiastically receive it because they were very well aware of that history. And as you look at the history of Harlem and Havana, it has been ongoing. When you look at the merger of jazz music in the 1940s with Dizzy Gillespie and Chano Poser from Harlem, that started a whole wave of African and Afro-Cuban music. You know, when we go fast forward with that, we understand the importance. So when we're in Harlem, when we're in Cuba, and we're meeting with the minister, and Congressman Rangel is there with us, the enthusiasm of two iconic communities, Harlem and Havana, whose history is known globally, coming together was a no-brainer for the Minister of Culture. So he then decided to tell us that this would be the first post-Obama cultural initiative between, as he put it, two iconic cities. Well, yes, New York City, but what he was really talking about is the community of Harlem. So Harlem and Havana. And just recently, to elevate the importance of what we are doing, we received on a conference call the other day through Congressman Rangel that this initiative of Harlem and Havana is a country-to-country initiative. And that took it to a whole nother level when he talked about what he and State Senator Schumer, our U.S. Senator Schumer, were looking at this initiative. So again, there are those activities that Lloyd mentioned, Melvin Norris so eloquently, stated. Our relationship with making this happen on a yearly basis is extremely important. Jasmine, could you show some of what is some of the images that we have? Let me just say the color purple. The color purple will be part of the Harlem presentations. When we talk about Harlem, Havana, we're talking about local Harlem musicians performing alongside the musicians coming from Cuba. The color purple, who captures the music and the history of people of color, had asked us if they could participate in all of the public activities when we are promoting the music of Harlem and Havana. So that's why we have the color purple a slide there. That's just, again, one of the dance troupes. It's the folkloric dance troupe that also will be coming. Same with the dancers.
That's the Dance Theater of Harlem. They're also participating on the dance component.
And so Dance Theater of Harlem will be having master classes with the Cuban dancers coming in, and those dance classes, this master dance classes, they're inviting dancers from other dance companies across the city to be at Dance Theater of Harlem for these master classes. This particular flyer for Harlem Havana was created in partnership with NYC and Company. NYC and Company, as we know, is a marketing arm of New York City, and they wanted to create a brand that could resonate all over, not only the United States, but all over the world. So that is the brand that was created by them. This is just, again, cards. There's Dizzy Gillespie, who, again, in the 1940s, fused music from Havana with the music coming out of this community. Gospel choir locally. And, of course, the world-famous Apollo Theater. Machito, Celia Cruz, Mungo Santa Maria, all Cuban artists who performed on the stages of the Apollo. We're going to capture that history when we have these musicians coming in from Cuba. So our cultural institutions play a major role. Another, that's one of Cesar Lopez's covers for one of his CDs. Cesar Lopez, who still resides in Cuba but is an international musician, a few years ago, met with a number of the musicians who had left Cuba and migrated to this country. And there was a reunion of bringing the Cuban musicians who left, the Cuban musicians who stayed, to come together and to create a documentary around our music called Cuba, which is, again, the fusion. So during the Harlem Havana period, we're talking about a film festival to educate a lot of our institutions and residents about this wonderful and rich relationship between the two. Choco. This is one of the most distinguished and esteemed Cuban artists. We've had the pleasure of visiting his gallery and spending time with him. He is on the lecture circuit. He's an educator, a humanitarian, but he is just a wonderful, wonderful person. So on the 16th of this month, at our mural pavilion, we will be doing what we call Harlem Hospital's Mural Pavilion. We will be doing a pop-up art of Choco. Our Harlem artist is Dr. Ademola Olujibifola, and we will have photographers who have visited Cuba from our community. The Center for Cuban Studies will also participate, and for 2 weeks we're going to have an art exhibition that focuses on Choco's work, musicians and photographers from this community. And to me, that is going to be a wonderful way of people seeing so brilliantly those images that are captured by our photographers. Again, that's an example of Choco's work. Again, one of the folkloric dances from Cuba. And then, of course, this is how we were represented when we arrived in Cuba, both flags together, and that was amazing to see. We're at Red Rooster, so we will have Alex Garcia, one of the top chefs in Cuba, adding to that menu on Tuesday. He will be cooking and adding some items to the menu at Red Rooster. Marcus Samuelson has partnered with us now and helped us to identify the local restaurants that will be participating. Some are traditional Cuban restaurants, Cubano Amor and Florendita, but more importantly is that the other restaurants that are being chosen are restaurants that don't traditionally serve Cuban food, but they are adding Cuban items and Cuban drinks to their menus during this period.
So what we're doing in East Harlem is Cubana Amor. It's Mountain Bird in East Harlem. In Central Harlem, it is Red Rooster, it's Sylvia's, and it's Street Bird. And in West Harlem is Floridita and Oso.
Again, we will at 1 Corinthians Baptist Church on the 21st at an 11 o'clock service. We will have our Cuban delegation performing with the 1 Corinthians Baptist Choir.
And we start off on this Sunday at Cathedral Church of St. John's the Divine with their gospel groups and with the Cuban groups and with Color Purple. And that's from 1:30 until 3. Obviously, it's open to the public, so hopefully you and friends and associates will come out.
Again, our trip in Havana at one of the restaurants and one of the groups that performed for us. And again, we're back to our collateral materials. So if there are any questions,
Do you have any more? Sorry. She has. Just finish out.
oh, of course, we'll be at Sylvia's. Our Cuban chef will also be at Sylvia's.
And if you stop there, you see what's happening. That's an example of how every one of the 7 restaurants is going to have a special menu, and you can see that they're having a signature dish, and then you can see they're having a signature drink. The cocktail there is the Viva Hemingway, but it begins with rum, so you can see that.
And this is yesterday's cover of yesterday's program at Columbia University.
And what we're showing there, some of you know, this is our 120th anniversary of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, 1896 to this year. So what we're just showing is some of the things that we have been working on during that timeline. And with the program, just real quick, things that I don't know, and I know most of you don't know because we weren't around at that time, but the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce was the sponsor of the George Washington Bridge. The Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce was the sponsor of the Triborough Bridge. The Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce was the sponsor of the 1939 World's Fair, in addition to the many other things that we've done together. So this is our 120th anniversary initiative, Harlem Havana.
That's it. So we're open for questions if you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Yes.
How many? Thanks for that great presentation. How many of the events are free and open to the public? Are all of them free and open to the public?
All of the public events are free. The events where there is a charge are in the restaurants because they're serving food and drinks, so they would pay for that.
And do you know the range of the prices?
Yeah, the ranges from the drinks go from $7 to $11. For the meals goes from $14 to $21, based on what you're doing. And the only other place where there's a charge, as I can recall, is the Apollo, because what they're doing is connecting it with amateur night at the Apollo on the 17th. So whatever the amateur night regular cost is, that's the cost. But all of the other things are, as Rosa correctly said, as per usual, are open to the public, whether it's at dance theater or whether it's at the churches and all of the outdoor events, the Jazzmobile events, the Harlem Summer Stage events. We're doing a major event in Newark. They asked us to join at NJ Pack. So all of those things are free.
And then let me just, just say that the Harlem Havana now is a brand that will continue far past this critical period. When Lloyd mentioned New Jersey Performing Arts Center, they've already started marketing and promoting Harlem Havana with the Buena Vista Social Club that arrives from Cuba on the 15th in New Jersey, and then they are making arrangements for them to come to Harlem. At City College and the City University of New York, they have a Cuban Studies program. They have already said that in October, November, they would like to do a Harlem Havana Film Festival. So with SUNY, with the State University of New York, when you're talking about the Cuban fashions, they're now talking about FIT also having FIT Fashion Institute of Technology, a member of the SUNY system, State University of New York. They're already talking about what we can do, which goes into November, December, and we're getting ready for February of identifying the artists that we're going to take from Harlem and New York City on our event in Havana.
I'll just close, if you don't mind, by saying a couple of things. We're picking up on the cultural aspect of this, really around tourism, but you should also understand there's a health aspect of this that we're also involved with. And you should know, for example, that the Hispanic Congressional Caucus and the Black Congressional Caucus have an initiative that they started in Cuba 3 years ago. I think it may be important for you to know that. And what they're doing is they have taken young persons from urban areas across America to have them go to the Cuban colleges and universities so that they can get medical degrees. You may know that Cuba is famous for its medical discipline. And those students are having free education to get their doctor's degrees. Condition is that once they have received their degree, they must spend 3 years in an urban setting, whether it is in Latin America, whether it is in Puerto Rico, whether it is in Africa, or obviously in the urban areas in America, to give back. So there are many things. I won't consume your time. SUNY is doing some significant educational initiatives where they're going to have students from Cuba come over, hundreds of them going to SUNY colleges, and students from New York going to Cuba to Cuban colleges. So this is a part of the initiative that we're working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other last questions? Yes, Jeff?
I have a comment. Congressman Rangel is serving as the honorary chairman for the Havana Harlem Music and Cultural Festival. Both our New York and Washington offices are working very closely with the Cuban missions in Cuba and in Washington, D.C. and New York to make appropriate arrangements to get the artists here, all appropriate visas and petitions. This is a very wonderful opportunity for the board to participate. Since the reopening of relations between Cuba and the United States and the reestablishment of our embassy, Congressman has been very excited about the potential of this festival bringing not only for Harlem, but for the city of New York, the state of New York, and the international global community. Congressman Ray is going to be recusing his vote for obvious reasons, but I would urge that we do a hand vote or name call vote so we can denote an accurate count. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You want to do a roll vote? I think we have strong support in the room.
We have 2 people recusing, correct?
Three.
Two.
Two voters.
Two voters. Curtis doesn't need to vote.
Okay.
So we have 1. So, no, as long as you get a majority of those who are not
Present. The
who
ones
are
present,
voting.
yeah.
Okay.
The quorum is everyone present.
From what I can glean from the questions and the sentiment in the room, everyone was attentive. No one raised questions of objection, just questions of general inquiry. It seems like we have a warm reception for this presentation. So I'm going to move forward so that we can get through our meeting quickly. So for consideration, the staff recommends HEDC Special Programs Fund, a request for a grant of up to $200,000 to the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce for the Harlem Havana Music and Cultural Festival, and authorization to take related actions. And note for the record again that there are 2 abstentions, recusals from this vote because of conflicts: Keisha Sutton and Jeff Eaton as Congressman Rangel's designee. So with that, is there a motion to move the recommendation?
Move forward. I'll second.
Motion made by Lamar Mays, second LaShawn Henry. Thank you. Second by LaShawn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Congratulations.
The one last comment that should have been made is the Chamber is a not-for-profit organization. It's 501c3.
Amen.
As all our grantees.
Yes,
Right, as all our grantees. We thank you for the work you do, Chamber. New York City wouldn't be the same, let alone Harlem wouldn't be the same without you. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next and last item on our agenda is our President's report. It's being presented for information
Information
only,
only.
and no vote will be required. Curtis?
It is in your packet. If there's one note in the particular report that we actually respond to a request from Eric Sheffel of I Love New York up in Albany, and based on that request, the Greater Harlem Chamber provided some photos that are going to be part of Harlem Havana in their e-newsletter.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? Okay. Is there any old business? Any new business? Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. See you next time on time.